Hello from China. My name is Dave, and I want to talk briefly about an interview I saw last week with Kyrsten Sinema. She's a candidate running for the Democratic Party for Senate in Arizona. Now, if you know me, you know that I refer to Democrats today as the New Left, denoting their globalist tendencies as opposed to the sovereign state tendencies. I don't say nationalist state, but sovereign state. There's a difference between the two. So let's take a look at the very first part of the interview here.
My concern about just funding a border wall is it's an 18th century solution to a 21st century problem.
Okay, now before I begin, real quickly, let me just kind of throw out what I mean when I refer to globalism. Globalism is an effort to convince every nation on planet Earth to cede the authority over their people to a central government. A body that will kind of set rules and regulations that applies to the whole planet. Because this, as you can imagine, would be a hard sell in many countries, typically their strategy as they go into these countries and make these arguments is to avoid specific issues, avoid specific discussions, because that's where they can get caught. There are two general tactics they use for doing this. One is condemnation. They will try to make the other person look like they were a bad person. They will attack them personally. The other is they will mask. That is to say, they will hide what their true intentions are within the political discourse of any particular nation. They will try to frame it as a political issue that people within that country can relate to. And let's take a look now at what we just heard from Ms. Sinema and see what tactics she might be using. First, we can see the condemnation tactic right away as she says in a great bumper sticker, I don't want to apply an 18th century solution to a 21st century problem. This means if you think a wall is the answer, you're living in the past. Come up to the future. You're not educated. You need to be more aware of where we're at in terms of our technologies and our abilities, and let's forget about doing things from the past. Sounds great, doesn't it? But let's take a look at what facts are. Okay, this is a specific discussion that she will avoid having. She doesn't want to have this discussion. Okay, border walls. Let's take a look at this 21st century technology, or maybe late 20th century technology that we've used over the last 25 years. First, let's take a look at manpower and money. You can see we've increased both greatly. Manpower by almost 500% and money by 1,000%. And of course, we're using this money to purchase 21st century technology. Some of the money that you just saw went to what is referred to as the Secure Border Initiative. It was approved, implemented, and passed between 2004 and 2006. Here's a list of some of the companies that agreed to do business with our government to develop these wonderful technologies that Ms. Sinema was alluding to in her very, very short comment about 18th century solution, 21st century problem. Now, specifically, the kinds of technology included ground sensors, remote camera systems, server tower rooms with 24/7 monitoring, and these tower rooms have like 20 monitors on a wall that have instant playback capability. So we're just looking at these border points where these cameras are all the time. We also have UAVs, or commonly referred to as drones. However, on all that's all 21st century, but the results don't really bode too well. First and foremost, you can see that less than 5% of the border is covered. And more than that, less than 1% of the apprehensions of all those trying to cross our border illegally are attributed to these new 21st century technologies. So let's see what this translates to in terms of people and numbers. And before I begin this brief discussion, let me tell you right now, anyone who comes up to you and says, here's how many people are in our country illegally, they're full of crap. No one knows how many people are in this country illegally. The reason is we do not have a secure border. We have no way of knowing. There are studies upon studies upon studies. Commonly, you hear the number 11 million. There's a recent study that was just put out to suggest it's over 20 million. Again, no one knows. So I've elected to use numbers from the Bureau of Customs and Border Protection because they have boots on the ground. They work at the border and they see what's going on every day. So, according to them, in 2017, there were 310,000 people apprehended trying to come into our country illegally. According to them, for every person they catch, 3 people make it in the country. So what does that translate? How has our 21st century solutions to our 21st century problem worked? Well, if we go back to 2005, we had 1.7 million people come into our country illegally. 2017, 930,000. Now, from a bill that was passed as the Secure Border Initiative, 930,000 doesn't equal secure to me. And a 40%, let's call it effective rate, is a failing grade at any public school. So it's not been successful. I think that anyone would find it hard to argue that the programs have been successful. And these are multiple high-tech companies working with our government, developing all kinds of 21st century technology to solve that 21st century problem. Let's take a look at an 18th century solution. Hungary, in 2015, had 391,000 people cross their border illegally. They built a wall in 2016. Look at 2017, 1,100. If you do the math, 12-year effort, billions in technology, all kinds of manpower, and the Congress talking about this issue over and over again, 46% effectiveness. Hungary, 2 years, or 3 if you count the year before they built the wall, 99.6% decrease. And you know, you don't have to go out of our country to see the effectiveness of a wall. For those that don't know it, there was a wall built south of San Diego back in the last part of the last century and first part of this century. And according to the Congressional Research Service, 94% reduction in illegal crossings. Now, if you're a student, what grade would you like? 46% or 94%? Or perhaps 99%? 18th century solution, boom. 21st century solution, doing the same thing we're doing now, not so good. This tells me that Ms. Sinema is a globalist because she's masking her discussion. First, she's condemning the other side. If you on a wall, you're some kind of 18th century animal. You're looking at, you don't know where you live anymore, or when you live, I guess I should say. And secondly, she's masking the notion of building, of closing the border, securing the border, under this notion of we got to use technology, and technology will make it happen. We all understand technology. We all recognize technology can do great things. So if someone simply suggests that we use 21st century technology, we're going to fix the problem. But if you talk about the issue specifically, she loses every time. Now, what's important to remember is Ms. Sinema knows all of this. She knows all of these facts. These are not hidden facts. I'm not some great internet guru genius who discovered these facts hidden someplace, archived someplace at some hidden site. These are public record facts. She knows all of this. But she's a globalist. And as a globalist, she wants to avoid talking about this. If she was just an American, and I don't mean in a sense of citizenship, I mean in the sense of American values, one of which being a nation of laws, then she would have to talk about this. The old Democrats would probably talk about this. We may not be happy with what we heard, but they would talk about it. Globalists, the new left, don't even want to have the discussion. They simply want to roll it over it and get their agenda met. So let's take a look at another piece of that interview.
In the past few days, the Department of Homeland Security has said it has seen a spike in adults traveling with children at the border. And that puts pressure on the entire system. DHS says that they are exploiting a loophole where people come here and they think that they can fan out, go free while they await a trial. How would you attack this very divisive issue?
Well, first, I think that separating families is wrong, and it doesn't comport with our American values.
Deep breath for anyone else who gets as frustrated as I get when I hear that argument about families. But it's a great answer. From a globalist perspective, to avoid the real issue, which is holding people accountable for violating our laws, she does in one sentence, she uses both tactics. One is she condemns anyone who supports a wall as someone who wants to break up a family. How horrible is that? And two is she masks the whole argument behind some American value discussion. No one wants to say, I don't believe in American values. In reality, it's an American value to believe that we are a nation of laws. So the question becomes, should we hold people accountable when they violate the law? Whether it's your brother or the person down the street or a politician. If they break the law, should they be held accountable? Is the government, and moreover, is the government guilty of separating families when they find people who violate the laws and put them in jail? By her logic, we should release everyone from jail because they've been separated from their families. These people need to be sent home. We have separated them from families. Okay, let's move on to the last part of the interview.
But we can keep our border safe and secure and control the flow of immigration without separating families. And there's a variety of things we can do. So what I would say is calling on my colleagues in Congress to find solutions that keep families together while encouraging people not to bring their families at the border for that purpose, and ensuring that we're keeping track of individuals while they're awaiting adjudication.
There's growing.
Scratch my head, scratch my head, scratch my head. What a wonderful idea. Let's encourage people not to come here with their families. And more importantly, the best idea she's had. Let's have Congress talk about it. For those who aren't aware, in 1986, we had an amnesty program, and everyone in Congress said, we will secure the border. 30 years later, 31 to be exact, 910,000 people come into our country illegally. 30 years of talking, that's 15 different Congresses of talking about the problem and finding solutions have failed. So her answer is, let's do the same thing. Okay, based off this interview and concerning the issue of border security and illegal immigration, it is clear to see that Ms. Sinema is not a Democrat. She's a globalist. She's a new leftist. Border security is not one of her top priorities. I don't know what those other priorities are, but in this issue, she'd rather see it go away. She does a great job of avoiding it. She has that answer for the 18th century solution to a 21st century problem is a great answer. It puts everybody on the defensive, and it totally avoids the discussion. And yet, as you see, and I showed you facts that are easy to get, she knows all of this. This is all out there. She just doesn't want to talk about it. She doesn't care too much about border security. That's not big in her heart. The challenge when you deal with globalists is it's difficult to ask a question that a statist would hear, a sovereign statist would hear, as I am, and answer it in terms that we can understand. They're very good at masking their answers, or as I said, condemning those who would even ask the question. So here's 3 questions I wish we could force her to answer. First, what number of illegal crossings is unacceptable to you? Second, what laws should we not hold people accountable? Third, Who should be able to decide which laws we should follow and enforce and which laws we don't have to follow and enforce? I do want to make a quick plug of my book, which is called Make It So. It is available at Amazon.com. It is from the perspective of Star Trek. It is an application of what the Star Trek world, or how the Star Trek world would reshape the current American society. In that book, I talk specifically about immigration, and I offer a clear plan, very different than what we're used to hearing, but a clear plan on how America, and more importantly, its politicians, could proceed to actually solve the problem, as opposed to continually, regularly, eternally, relentlessly talk about the problem. Okay, thank you very much for listening. Take care.